and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duva, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, a man, a plan, a canal,
Tim Longo.
You ruined the palindrome.
Oh, boy. Man. We're going to have to... Well, I know you already have a list of these, but
I do.
Maybe we'll publish them in a book someday.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. You know, when we publish our first Dev Game Club book.
Yeah, that's
Anecdotes
that's a good
and
plan.
jokes. Something like that.
That was my 3-second bit for the week, so I'm good.
You're done. Nice.
Thank you. So, here we are, finishing off the Wasteland.
Yeah, we sure did. Walking off into the sunset.
Yeah, I love that about this game. I mean, we'll get to the end, in a little bit. What did you do first? I mean, you were talking pre-roll about going back to the glow. You had the glow.
Yeah, so when we finished last, it was perfect kind of timing for me to basically go back and scour all of those loose ends, kind of all over the place. I hadn't finished a couple things in the hub, like the Thieves Guild thing, a couple things with Decker, I think that's the guy's name, Keith David.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right.
Great. By the way, good voice acting in this game overall.
Yeah, excellent.
Really well done. And I remember that, I think we talked about it in previous episodes, but I remember that standing out at the time as well. Just that kind of polish, especially with the opening cinematic and that kind of voiceover. And then the ending.
Right, but it's several places. It's the Overseer. It's basically, one person per town. Maybe two people per town.
A couple towns had a few.
The big ones, because you've got that kind of guru type guy who's in the first town. It's actually funny. I thought I met somebody who I spoke to this time, and I thought the shape of the face was basically the same. It was a different person, but I was like, oh, they basically used the same model and didn't really tweak the chin very much from Aradesh to this one.
The Overseer and the one of the trading company guys, like the face shape is pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty funny.
Definitely a lot of similarities. And I think like the guy in Junktown, the good guy that you help, and the Thieves Guild guy, even though he had a British accent, I think the face was,
Oh, right, yeah.
So,
sure.
I mean, a lot of good reuse of assets, I would assume. Yeah. I was doing a bunch of loose ends, so I did this stuff in the hub, just kind of, a few things there, and I was still kind of being my roguish self, and I did a few jobs for Decker, which I would never have normally done.
Yeah, tell me about that, because that is a thing that I still haven't done. In fact, I went in there... I didn't mention it a couple episodes ago, but when we first were digging around Hub, I actually went down, got into that basement, and then basically told him off, and that was it, And I went and found the family that he wanted me to kill, and I told him to get out of Dodge, and I never spoke to Decker again. Which is too bad because it's Keith David.
Yeah. There's a few little threads there. He takes you on or asks you to do a couple missions for him, and it's quite lucrative. At least for me, I was definitely low on the cash. So, but like I said earlier, I usually play kind of the Paragon type of character, so it was very uncomfortable for me to go along with this guy. But the first thing he does, he wants you to kill that couple. Which I ended up doing. I was pretty powered up at that point, so it wasn't much of an issue. And then he actually sends you off to kill the priestess who is in the church, the named one that also has voice is voiced and has her own pre-rendered. So I didn't actually. I pissed her off at some point earlier, so she wasn't going to talk to me anyway. So
might as well.
Might as well. It was. I will say there was a certain amount of liberation in this playthrough because I just sort of like whatever happens, and I'm just rolling with it, versus like my usual min-max finding the optimum path, the optimal path for every single thing that I do. So you do a couple of those things, and then you get paid quite a bit for both of those, and then I think it ends after that. But
okay. Yeah, it reminds me. I mean, recently I played Dishonored in anticipation of the sequel, and it was the same for me. I played, straight stealth, ghost, kill nobody the first time through, and then there's like a handful of trophies that I didn't have. I'm like, well, I'll play again, and I'll just see what the game plays like when you play what they call high chaos, which is where you just kill everybody, and it is significantly different, and they actually did a really good job. The funny thing about it, and this is kind of what yes, it's sort of liberating, but also it's weird because you don't, unless you play a game a second time, you don't even know you're missing that,
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have a sense that you're missing it, but you don't really know. Like, what are the things that they're going to do that are going to be different, I got towards the end of the game and this character hated me because I was such a murderer, and so without honor, right? And meanwhile had gotten all sick and stuff. And I was like, how's the other half living, in Fallout, for example, and of course I've got you to tell me because I'm not going to play it, I don't think, a fourth time. I think this is the last time I'll play the original.
Probably for me too. I agree. I think I don't know. Obviously, there's pretty linear games out there as well that don't have this challenge, but these are conversations I feel like I've often have just in game development of that age-old problem of the sort of ROI or return on investment for optional content, or different ways to do things. It's not even just optional content, but it's, basically having the game react in fundamentally different ways for different players who will never see that. Most people, statistically, we know most people don't play games twice, and a lot of people never finish it once.
Exactly. I was going to say, very, very few people actually play it all the way through the first.
So it's really hard to justify when you're having those conversations about the design to really lean into that stuff. But the water cooler talk can prevail. I think it does impact review scores and press that do spend a little extra time playing things twice, which I think is always appreciative, or at least dabbling a second or half of a time.
Well, and I think if you can support multiple play styles, you can support multiple players, and you maybe grow your audience just by virtue of the fact that,
the flexibility.
I mean, BioShock is a good example of something you can play stealthy melee, with the wrench, basically the whole game, or you can go in guns blazing and play it like a shooter. And of course, in order to garner a larger audience, they pushed it more on the shooter end because they thought that would connect with a larger audience. But people who knew sim games knew, but this is actually, going to be the special sauce that I like, right? I mean,
yeah.
So I think you have a chance to connect both with a hardcore and maybe a wider audience if you're able to hit, a few more notes, in your game.
Yeah, and I mean, despite the not seeing how the other half lived in these games, to your point, I think ultimately that's where those conversations tend to go, and why those decisions tend to win is because ultimately we want the player to be able to fulfill their desires and do the thing that they want to do and have agency, and that ends up becoming more powerful, even though they may not play a second time or see all the different variations, which we've talked about, I think, on this series and other series in the past as well. When I have an idea and I want to do a thing, and if the game lets me do that thing, regardless of not getting to do both versions of that thing, it's pretty fulfilling. And I think it's
special.
I don't think it really needs to be said, but our medium is unique in that way, which I think is great.
Right, absolutely. So after that, I guess, so you did a bunch of kind of piddling stuff around just to finish off some.
Yeah, and I was leveling up. Like I didn't kill the Deathclaw mother, so I went back and did that because I never found the basement. A few other odds and ends. I went back to the glow because I wanted to check that out, without getting extreme radiation poison. And I was telling Brett in the pre-show that I had forgotten. Maybe I didn't, because of the radiation, I didn't really fully explore that area the first time, and I actually couldn't this time because I actually wasn't high enough intelligence. But you get down there and the power's all off, and there's a series of key cards that you have to find in a certain order to actually progress very far. and you find this this AI computer basically down there that I didn't remember, and it wouldn't talk to me because my intelligence was too low. So I actually couldn't turn the power on to get to the lower level.
You needed some mentats.
Oh shoot! I totally forgot about that. So there is, so there would have been a way. Which I never use the drugs because me either. I almost never, and I just had made that a rule for myself in this playthrough. I don't know why I do that actually. I guess I'm kind of trying to avoid the sickness or whatever, addiction. But yeah, I could have done it. Maybe I'll go back because I want to see what that's all about.
Yeah, that's curious. I'm actually very curious about that. I do have a save. I think I saved from when I saved the vault, like when I got the water chip there, and I saved it and I kept that save just in case anything ever went really wrong.
Yeah.
Where things just were, totally hosed. Because as I said, I played an unpatched version of this game, and at times it was a little rickety. I was glad that I felt secure having that. Like, it might take me hours to get back through it all, but at least I could. Mm-hmm. So that's a possibility for me as well, actually.
Yeah, I think I have a save. I did the glow after doing the military base, so I knew I was in the cathedral is the only thing I had left. So I think I have a save there. So yeah, maybe I'll go check that out.
Worth doing.
And I had actually found the cathedral early on, just by kind of wandering down because it shows up on the map. You don't know what it is yet, and then I pissed somebody off when I had gotten there the first time, and I'd forgotten about that. And I basically obliterated everybody outside of the cathedral. So when I got there before, they were already pissed at me and things were not going well. So kind of predetermined my fate there.
Yeah, that was actually, I guess we'll get to it in a moment. It's funny because I went to the base, which is kind of the last two things we had to do were the base and the cathedral. I went to the base and I had some paladins with me outside, and they just took apart the few mutants that were out there. And then I went alone into the base, and while I was in there, I exhausted all my minigun ammo, and I had thousands of rounds, and so I'm like, I blew through everything, and I pretty much had gotten through all of it before I had killed the smart mutant down there who was running, who was the one who tortured you. Yeah. And,
Lieutenant something.
When he previously, Lieutenant something or other. So he, I took care of them, and then I went down further and I got the key that I was going to need and things like that. And then I blew the whole place up. And there was some crazy stuff that happened. Like, I walked around and I talked to all the engineers in the robes next to the vat room. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you did that.
I kind of killed them all.
Oh, okay. They dissolve. They actually explode if you talk to them.
Oh, wait, what?
Once you've killed Van Hagen or whatever the robe dude who works with the lieutenant. Once apparently that something happens there that breaks their connection with the master, and they all just start killing themselves as soon as you talk to them. So they basically explode.
Whoa.
It's bizarre.
And
they say something appropriate. They say something like, our link with the master is gone, type of thing. I don't think they say it that explicitly, but that's basically the undercurrent of what they say. So I just went around and talked to all of them, and they just disintegrate,
gosh,
blow into purple and yellow bits. So that was pretty good. And then I raced out of there because, of course, the whole place was blowing up, and I was treated. I'd forgotten about this. There's some very satisfying cutscenes as you get to the end of the game. For the time. I mean, it's in this tiny little 320 by 240 window, if that. So it's not a high res movie by any means, but it's really cool, and pretty well shot, showing you like these green vats and breaking up the walkways and blasting them at the camera and things like that. It was pretty decent.
Oh yeah,
good little destruction scene.
How did you deal with the force fields, the yellow force fields?
I had a pretty high, I want to say, repair skill.
Yeah.
And I was a skilled character, so all my skills started kind of higher. So by using repair, you can turn them off.
Just the force fields themselves?
Yeah, they turn off temporarily, so individually. I found a computer, but I couldn't. I think I locked it up, and I think that was the other way I was supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And that's not what I did. I think I was fiddling with it, and they didn't turn off, and then I couldn't fiddle with it anymore. I was like, I guess I'm finding another way. So I just walked through the red ones and took the damage. I had a ton of healing.
Yeah, I did that too.
Stim packs and stuff like that. But then the green ones I was able to disable, and then you basically have to step right through because they turn right back on as soon as you've moved through them. So
yeah, it's something that I wanted to bring up because for full disclosure, I did look up one hint in this particular area because I was stuck for a while and I was pretty frustrated, and I knew I wasn't going to find something. But it kind of comes back to the point that we had made before of the no hand holding. I think that my repair might have been high enough to do the force fields. I don't know individually, but I did find out that you could, which is the reason I wanted to bring this particular solution up is it's pretty opaque and weird. It's not, I'd be curious. We'll never know, but I'd be curious to know the statistic of how many people found this out naturally. You can take the radio that you get off of one of the super mutants up above in the entrance, and you can wire it to the computer and link the two. And then once you have that radio linked, I think maybe using repair or science, like hacking, science is hacking in this game. And then you put it in your quick slot, and then when you use it, it turns all of the yellow, like a radio signal, turns all of the yellow force fields off permanently.
What?
Yeah. So I was like, that's a A to B to Z kind of situation. And so
that is a total strategy guide tip.
Yeah. So I looked up in a FAQ in that particular case, and so I cheated. So I found the optimal way in that way, but. In retrospect, I was kind of like, wow, that's pretty complicated and no one's going to find that. You can also how do you
use the radio? How do you even...
If you put it in your quick slot and you just, click on the window.
No, but how do you connect it to the computer?
So this is the other thing I had forgotten and had, it obviously this fact reminded me of it. If you right click and hold on any item, it'll bring up a longer list of options, not just the binoculars for the look at, but it'll also bring up open up your backpack on that item, and then you can go and select the item in your backpack that you want to use on it. Is that
what?
Yeah. So, and I totally forgot about that until I cheated on this FAQ. And, we could have been using it this whole time. So if you're using like a key card on something or whatever, you don't have to take it out of your backpack and put it in the quick slot. You just press and hold, right click and hold, and then open up your backpack from there. So. Well,
I'm glad there's a solution to that because I thought that was pretty inelegant that you had to swap around your stuff to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not happy that I
didn't know about it. And there's also another option on that bar that comes up when you press and hold. It actually has your skill decks on there too.
Skills.
Yeah. So both of them are there. And then obviously that was like at the end for me. So I started using it after that, but it was far too late to be that effective. And I also blew the place up. And then did you use the radio? I remember this from the first playthrough, but did you use the radio on that same radio when you get it outside with the paladins? If you kill that first guy, he drops a radio, the first super mutant. If you use it and talk into it, you can convince the rest of them to leave. Because I did that in my first playthrough a long time ago. But I didn't have
So that you go in and the base is empty.
I don't know if it's just the guys out front. I think it's just the guys out front.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, there's like those three of them or something. But you have to have high enough intelligence.
Yep. Well, that's where, this base was where I picked up a whole bunch of missiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which made Cathedral a lot harder, I have to say. Because
pretty close quarters.
Yeah, I was going to say, you go up the stairs in the Cathedral to basically need a key.
A lot of lock and keys, yeah.
Yeah, which is a little not so keen on, but they do want to gate you a little bit, I guess. It's the end of the game. But it does funnel you down, and the game has been so open to that point. But anyway, so you have to go up into this tower and basically kill everybody as you go up. I did at a certain point kill somebody and be like, oh, he's got a robe. Why don't I just put that on? Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the game was a lot easier.
Yeah, me too.
But going up there, I was just, 3 or 4 steps away from super mutants and shooting the missile at them and hoping that they died, because otherwise they were going to come up close, and I was probably going to die because you take splash damage from the rockets.
Yeah,
they're right next to you. It's pretty peppered with a lot of damage.
Yeah, it was pretty rough when they get up close, when there's 3 of them around, but especially those stealth boys, the Nightkin with the stealth boys on. That was.
Oh, they never stealthed me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's probably because you're stealthy. I did notice they had stealth boys on them,
but they weren't invisible.
They were never invisible for me. No.
Interesting. I mean, they're basically transparent. That's funny, huh? Yeah, I definitely was able to use my stealth in a fair number of spots where, in some cases, like funny, the guy, as an example, the guy right outside the door of the military base that had the holodisk on him with the access code.
Oh, with the code, yeah.
I basically could sneak right up behind him without him knowing. And I tried to pick his pockets a few times, but my steel wasn't high enough, so I never was able to do it. So I basically just had to take him.
I definitely did a playthrough where I was Mr. Stealth, a long time ago. Yeah. Stealth, and I don't know if I did a lot of steal. I must have, because that sounds really familiar to me, being able to sneak up on people like that.
And it's hilarious because when you stealth, at that point I had the 3 paladins and Katya with me, and when you stealth, they won't see anybody in your party, so they're walking all over the place right in front of everybody and totally breaking the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, that doesn't really work.
Yeah, but I exploited that.
That's funny. These guys in this giant power armor, and you in this power armor, probably.
Oh yeah, I was. Yeah, I was the stealthiest power armored lady.
Actually, I also discovered there that the power armor gives you a lot of extra strength.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For me, it was 3 points. I was at 7. It gave me 10.
Yeah, I think I was at 9 or 10 as well. But what amused me about that was I went and swapped out for the uniform at one point, and then I was trying to pick up ammo, and and I couldn't pick up anything because I was way over the limit. But it won't stop you at that point. It's like a loophole, to let you carry more stuff. So interesting. I was like, well, that's a solution. It's much better. Honestly, it's much better than being unable to move. Which is the worst way to deal with that.
Or
stuff.
Dropping stuff on the ground and then not knowing that you dropped it. And I don't know how many times, because I had issues with weight. So I would go and as I was trying to min-max my money, at least some, so I could buy a couple things, I would put a bunch of stuff in some cabinet nearby. And then I would always leave the town and inevitably leave the town forgetting to to pick that stuff up again. And I was like, nice. Oh my God, all my grenades. So I had to go all the way back or whatever it might be. But
nice.
And then the two quick things I forgot to mention that I did in the Boneyard, because I'm assuming you weren't able to do them because you killed everybody down there through that big battle. But
yes.
The chemist and the the mechanic guy, you can get your power armor to turn your power armor into hardened power armor with the chemist, and it basically ups the resistances of all of the different types for the power armor by going to the hub and getting this chemical book for that guy, etc. And then
also good if you're going to go to the glow.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, naturally with the armor on, I was like 42% radiation against radiation. So I just popped a couple pills and I was at 100%. So I had no trouble. And then the other guy, the mechanic guy, if you have a plasma rifle, he'll turn it into a turbo plasma rifle for a little extra if you've done a couple of the quests there. And but I wasn't using that. I tried to get Katya to use it, but she wouldn't actually play along.
Yeah, that's one thing about the followers is that they have the thing that they do, and that's all that they do.
Yeah, and they won't even wear armor that you give them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of a bummer.
Definitely something that got improved in the future, I believe.
Yeah, I think they had their own inventory and slots maybe, and you could, I'm misremembering that, but or you could tell them what you wanted them to use. Mm-hmm. I'm half wanting to play 2, but, you know, I probably...
It's a big game.
It's too big, yeah.
It is. It's too big. I've never finished that one. Never finished it. It is just too big for me.
I definitely finished it once. I don't think I played it twice, though.
Yeah. I've started it several times. I actually was planning to play it, I don't know, half a dozen years ago or something like that. I popped in and I was like, I'm going to finish this time. And there's some, like, multi-tool or something you pick up at some point that you need to break into some city, and I had sold that. And even though theoretically I could go back and buy it, I had no idea
where to find it. Yeah,
and I was like, at that point, I was like, "Yep." And here ends another attempt at playing Fallout 2.
Yeah, it's the dread of that. Like, I held on to the lighter. I don't know if you found it.
I found the lighter. Yeah, sure.
I think it's probably the only one, maybe, but I held on to it the whole time because I was just terrified that I was going to need it for something.
Need it. Yeah, this is what the master wants. This is his rosebud.
Yeah, one thing.
When I was a child, I lost my lighter.
Then they scattered rope across, various places, so you could tell rope was going to be something that you'd need at some point, and you actually ended up using it twice. But that lighter, I was worried. No, I'm not selling this lighter. It's worth $40.
Zippo of the gods.
And so another quick thing that I thought was interesting as I was kind of exploring around, I'm just surprised at... So did you ever go to the coast at all, to the water, like the ocean?
I didn't go into any ocean tiles. I did do a sweep where I just went all the way up the coast, but I never actually stopped.
It's just so funny.
I did stop in some like city tiles. Like you could see the map like there was a city, and it was just so melancholy.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of,
just bombed out, nothing there.
It's just cool to me that they did that. I guess it's for the random encounters, essentially, because you could happen upon a random encounter while you're on a city tile or a coastal tile. But, I mean, I don't know, the amount of effort at this time that they put into that sort of overworld section, I just think is cool, and that little extra mile. Especially, I think if I had more time, maybe back in the day when I did have more time, exploring the entire overland, would have been fun and cool, even though it doesn't really yield you much. And then, I mean, speaking of that, you mentioned in the first episode, but refresh my memory on the alien spacecraft thing. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so if you go to a particular location on the grid, it's in the upper left somewhere, as I recall. But if you basically, immediately after getting out of the vault, beeline to that location, like you have to literally get there in the first few days of the game. So like the first 10 days or whatever. If you race to that location, you have and it may not even be 100%, but there's a good chance that there will be a crashed UFO landed there. And I think the aliens are dead, and you can just walk up and get this crazy, laser gun.
It's a pistol, right?
It's a pistol. Yeah. It's like a, I don't know, Martian ray gun or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you can have that. And I don't remember if it's a thing that I feel like it's a thing that only has so many shots. And I think I went and did it at one point, probably on my second playthrough, just because I was like, I'm going to go back to Fallout. I wonder what I missed, and did some looking up and stuff like that. Yeah. I never would have found that. Never. In a million years, I wouldn't find that.
And it's timed, so if you don't go to it...
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So if you don't know about it, no way. So, yeah, that's a great little thing. And it's that sort of stuff that makes its way into, Fallout 3, for example, there was a DLC that was set on a alien spacecraft.
On the spacecraft, yeah.
Mothership Zeta.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I forget which series we talked about this, but that concept of these the internet wasn't like fax and internet stuff wasn't really that common at this time, and it's that strategy guide fodder. Maybe we're talking about it with Final Fantasy or something.
I think it was Super Metroid, actually.
Super Metroid, yeah, as well. But just
that's maybe the oldest thing we've played, and so certainly there's stuff there that you'd have a damn time figuring out.
Yeah, or you mentioned like there was something in one of the Final Fantasy games that like you had to get these chests in a certain order and blah blah blah.
Oh right, yeah, yep.
And that stuff, and this feels like that, but
that was Final Fantasy X actually.
Okay,
it was a thing where if you opened a particular chest near the beginning of the game, I think there were 2 or 3 of them. If you opened them, you couldn't get the ultimate weapon, which is like a big deal.
Yeah,
Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, I mean, so mixed. I think I remember. I think I probably still even have it in the box. I think I have the Fallout 1 strategy guide, and I remember reading through all of this and trying to find all that stuff after the fact, or maybe even during playing that first playthrough. But it was a different time for sure,
Yeah.
Yep.
These days I only have the 3 strategy guides for the 3 games we shipped at LucasArts.
Oh,
those are the only ones I have left.
A few other odds.
They're in reach. I could reach over and pick them off the shelf.
So what did you do in the Cathedral? Because I think I played it differently than I did my first couple times.
Mostly I blasted my way through, and then I figured out that I could put on the robes and just walk through.
Yeah.
And then I went down to the basement and set the bomb ticking.
Okay.
I know that there's an ending because I know I've done it before where you can talk the master into killing himself.
There's a couple. You can fight him. I think I fought him in my first one. You can also talk.
That may have been the first thing I did. And the second time, I may have argued with him. And you have to have some information, I think, to do that. Like you have to know that the mutants are sterile. That basically his whole project is doomed, and that makes him go crazy and kill himself.
Huh.
But that also sets off the nuke. And then you can kill him. I think is basically if he dies. The only way this thing ends is with L.A. blowing up again. Well, the cathedral at least blowing up. With that device in the basement. Yeah,
I did the same, and I mean, talk about like an item that you need to keep. I mean, your repair or whatever might have been high enough, but did you use the key?
I used the key.
Yeah, it's so funny because you get that in the base, and it's like, what's this random key? I better keep this.
Exactly. Yeah. No
idea what it's for, and then it's like, it's kind of like, could it be a key to set off a nuclear bomb? I guess it could be. And then you try it randomly. You're like, oh, yep. I think I tried all of the keys I had in my inventory at that point.
You had more than one key?
Well, no, I mean, like, the symbols. And then
right,
I had 3 different key cards, which I knew wouldn't work. All the holodisks, which, by the way, we didn't talk about last time, and I forgot and discovered it accidentally. The holodisks you can use, quote unquote,
and actually play them,
and then they go into your Pipboy. Totally forgot about that until like this last session, and it adds all these cool text and storytelling into your Pipboy.
Well, and the FMV.
The FMV. For which?
No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
Oh, I was like, what? There's FMV.
What did I miss?
Yeah. Oh my god, that would have been cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been cool. That's what I kind of expected because it's a holodisc. Like I expected Princess Leia going.
Yeah,
help us.
Right.
Help us, Faltwell. You're our only hope.
Yeah. So basically, after you take him out and / blow the place up, which I pretty much snuck through that place. Yeah, with the robes as well, but even without the robes, and didn't. I was like at level 13 at that point, so I figured I didn't really need the XP. So I didn't really kill most of the mutants. They just blew up in the explosion.
Right. No, I mostly did. Like I went in and I killed his weird monstrosities, his pets, and then I got towards the end of that and I couldn't get past it. Like I just didn't have enough stim packs and whatever. So I started looking for other options because I wasn't going to go hunting all over the wasteland to find a few rockets. So even though I probably could have bought them somewhere, I guess. Maybe the gun runners, but I just looked for other things. I was like, oh, I have these robes. How about that?
Yeah, it worked well.
That'll work here too. Yeah,
and it's
cool. It's a good way to end. Like it's like, and then I snuck in and I walked among them, and I was like a secret agent.
And that doesn't. I discovered that if you have a follower with you, that won't work, because they know that you're, the follower's not carrying a robe, wearing a robe, of course. So they do. It's funny because the stealth thing, they didn't account for followers or companions, and then in this case they did. So it's kind of a weird little, breakage of that rule.
Right. Well, I feel like with the stealth thing, it's more followers will engage in combat when you do.
Yeah, but in some cases they're standing literally right on top of the enemies.
Yeah, that may be, but I think it's a side effect.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they planned for it. I think it just happened.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did it. It just is that little bit of extra kind of polish kind of thing.
So you managed to kill off all the followers then? I
did, yes. I found them all. And then they all, unfortunately, died in some epic battle with somebody. Usually miniguns were involved or something. And it's a bummer that they just, that you can't get, because I had some good armor that Katya could have worn, to protect her, but she wouldn't put it on. I tried to force her to use the turbo plasma because her energy weapons were pretty good, I believe. So I tried to take everything away from her, so she was forced to use that, but it still didn't work. So,
yeah, that's weird. Yeah, that's one thing that I feel like they probably knew they could have played more with, and of course they definitely do in Fallout 2.
Yeah.
So it's
they used the tools they had.
You can see the promise. Yeah.
That they had to, basically dialogue trees and state changes and stuff to allow you to do some of that stuff. And then they realized, I think, the popularity of it. And they expand upon it quite a bit. I think there's quite a few more companions you can get in Fallout 2 as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because
I think in this one, it's Ian, Tycho, Katya, and Dogmeat, I think, are really the only ones.
I think that's it. I think there's just 4.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's it, except for there's a movie.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
And I had forgotten that they were this in-depth in this one.
Yeah.
I remembered you telling me about Fallout 2, how many different things would show up at the end. Because there's some slaving going on in Fallout 2 that you can resolve in many different ways. And I love how it... this is a great way to deal with multiple endings, is to just have them all. And, instead of trying to tie it into one big thing that you tell, you just tell 6 or 7 little stories. This happened in this place, and this happened in this place, and this place never came back. And I loved it. I'm like the hub kind of in mine. It was the hub just kind of withered away, but Junktown thrived because of the law and order, I guess. I really appreciated having lots of little ways to tie off these stories because they do feel a little unended, in the game proper. Yeah,
because they don't, they're accounting for those loose ends that you probably haven't interacted with in a while. Like, did they talk about Shady Sands with you, where Tandy basically goes back to help her father kind of rebuild that, and they kind of talked about how they're thriving as well? Because I assume, did you go and rescue her from the raiders?
I must have.
I don't know if maybe she doesn't. In some cases, won't get captured, but I remember doing that, and she thanks you and everything, and then
that rings a bell. I did that in the first episode, so it's a while back. Yeah, I did.
And then did they mention anything? Oh no, because your Necropolis was dead, right? All of the ghouls.
Yeah, nothing was mentioned about Necropolis.
So Necropolis for me was hilarious because, the first thing they said was the mutants. We dealt with the mutant threat, and the remaining survivors moved basically left and went east, which I thought was an interesting little tidbit. I wonder if Bethesda, took that little tidbit to expand upon for, basically for 3 that takes place in the East. But I thought that was an interesting little detail. And then because the ghouls on my playthrough survived, they basically said that they took the water, now that they had, because I fixed the water pump for them.
Right.
And they had that technology and they turned it into some sort of business. And then they said the ghouls opened up a business to thrive and kind of fuel the rest of the wasteland with water using that technology. So I thought that was hilarious that they became
That's pretty awesome.
Industrious little ghouls. So that was cool. Yeah, and they spoke about raiders. I'm kind of looking at my notes. The raiders we took care of, that they kind of give you a little call out there. Yeah, so that was pretty much it for me. Yeah, my hub also didn't make it, which
right.
I didn't.
I think that's probably because of our criminal element.
Oh, maybe so. Yeah.
We both. I did the Thieves Guild quest, and you did the Decker stuff, and I think that probably unsettles the the balance of power there.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm sure there's some trigger. I don't know what it is, but I'm guessing it's that.
And then there's the little overseer moment.
Yes.
which
was my favorite thing about this game the first time I played it. I remembered that. I didn't remember the movies, but I remembered being cast out.
Yeah.
You were basically Moses.
Yeah.
You've led us back to the promised land, Vault Dweller, but now it's time. You really don't fit in here anymore.
It's so Mad Max.
All the kids are going to be all the kids are going to be looking up to you, and they're going to want to leave the vault. It's going to be mass hysteria. So you need to go, and you just go, which I love. It's not a choice.
Yeah.
It is one thing about the game, right? We talked in a previous episode about how you have to give them the water chip, and you have to deal with the mutant threat. You can't let those things go, or else the game ends. So essentially, the one fixed thing about your character is that you care deeply about the vault.
Yeah.
And you'll make sacrifices for it. That is the one sure thing about your character. Male, female, smart, dumb, huge or tiny, whatever. The thing you care about is the vault. And so when the overseer says, we can't have you here, you just go. And I really love that. It's the one bit of consistent character, across all plays that works.
Well, it's also consistency with the tone of the whole game, because we talked about this in the first episode of the series. The gray area that this game, inhabits, and the sense of just post-apocalyptic, somber foreboding, etc. They just, they take to the hilt, and it wasn't necessarily for RPGs. It wasn't really the common way to do things. And this concept of you win and you did everything right, and then you're still cast out and you're kind of left. It's also a good way to end a game in case you want to do a sequel, right?
Right, sure.
Which they may or may not have been thinking about at the time, but hopefully they were. But it just fits. It fits the tone of it all. And I always got the sense, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but the voice acting and directing for the overseer always had this bit of suspicion or something that I had for him, right, and his ultimate motivations and his, the way that he was kind of talking about stuff. And he definitely had strong opinions about groups, and kind of had a way of
let's put it this way: he's a fascist.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. He's fundamentalist. In some way, and you kind of knew. I feel like I remember back then knowing, and then this playthrough definitely kind of feeling like, this isn't going to. You kind of see the thread. Like, this isn't going to go well in the end. Something's going to happen.
They're going to want this guy to be overseer, and I can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That he's selfish. That there's a selfish man, and that's, again, I think that concept of selfishness throughout the game, that people, because of survival, basically, right? Because that's the theme. In a Tolkien based RPG, it's usually more black and white.
Right.
Good guys and bad guys, and this is just different, which we'll talk about in the next segment, I think.
All right. Well, let's then take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about our pillars and such.
Sounds good.
Welcome back from the break. As we are on our final playing show of Fallout, it's time to talk about our pillars and our takeaways. And I feel like this game, more than maybe the others, we've kind of been propping those up as we've gone along. But why don't you give us a stab there, Tim?
Well, one of the first ones that we did talk a lot about, but to reiterate, and I think as far as like kind of core takeaways for me, that, obvious one for this game, but consequences is a word that comes to mind when it comes to really living with the choices that you make. And some of it maybe is a little bit the way I played, because I didn't save scum too much, but I think they do throughout the game, regardless of if you reload, there's just hard decisions to be made about in many places in the game. And in this day and age, in that day and age, for this game, and for RPGs in general, it just wasn't a common thing. You definitely you'd have some, some BioWare style choices here and there in this era, but I don't know if it was because this was sort of a fresh franchise, and though loosely based on Wasteland, they kind of had a clean slate, and I'm sure they didn't really have that much oversight in where people were kind of asking them to make a certain kind of game. They just they made the game they wanted to make, and
I think that goes hand in hand with the theme, the setting, to set it in a place where people are trying to scrub along and maybe aren't making choices based on their moral value and more on their survival value. It makes sense to have those kinds of consequences because things are literally life and death, right, for so many people to make those choices.
Yeah, combining consequences with survival, with post-apocalyptic theme, yeah. And maybe that was naturally coming from the theme, like you said, but they committed to it, and it was something that is very, very obviously a goal. And I just remember at the time, and it's been talked about, I think, ever since. And I think Bethesda's done a good job at continuing that spirit. And it's influenced a lot of games in that regard, especially RPGs. I feel like the BioWare games, after the fact, Icewind Dale and those sort of Black Isle games, they tried to do some of that as well, but still on the lighter side of the D&D world.
Right.
But you could see a little bit of that everywhere. I think Arcanum, which we talked about, which was Troika, Tim Kaine, and I'm forgetting
Boyarsky and Jason Anderson, I think.
Yeah. And so, similar thing, Temple of Elemental Evils, so, and also kind of an unsung cult, I don't know if classic is, but cult following is the vampire game that they did.
Right, yes.
That was, very, there's a lot of love for that game because of the similar things. And I don't know if it was Tim's influence or what it was, but they had the three of them had a general goal to make consequences matter. And I think it's really influenced, especially games like Mass Effect and those sorts of games that aren't afraid to have multiple endings and to have the sort of the tendrils of flowcharts that come from that sort of, concept. And then the capper that we just talked about in the previous segment of the ending cinematic that really is pieced together to actually give you some gratification for your choices, which it was also a cool thing that not a lot of people.
Pulling that all the way through.
Yeah. So full closure on that. So that's one of the themes that I wanted to definitely pull out again.
For me, I would say that the big thing, and this is something we mostly touched on in the first episode, was the RPG renaissance. That this, you can hear it in all the titles you just listed, like just how much this really was at the beginning of all that. Very much, this was a real departure from, your Ultimas or what have you, and it went in a different direction. And many series were trying to find their way at this time. Like famously, Ultima 9 was a bit of a mess. Took years and years to even be finished. May have even come out after this. I want to say it definitely did. And made some mistakes. It had already been struggling with Ultima 8, and it's a different time, for RPGs. They're at a point where they have gotten expensive to make, on the PC. Expensive enough to make that they're now a much riskier proposition. The niche market, and maybe even a grognard kind of market has has shriveled up a little bit, or has at least lowered the earnings potential of RPGs in the late 90s. And so, they did a couple things here. One, they were totally a skunkworks project. They kind of cobbled this together in their own time to a certain degree. They got a very small team together. Relatively speaking, this is a very small team. And managed to kind of reboot the RPG and what it could be. On the conventional wisdom would have said you have to have elves and orcs at the time, and this stood that right on its head. And from all those titles you mentioned, it went in all kinds of different directions. There was even one based in the Crusades with Lionheart.
Yeah,
I don't remember who that. I didn't play that one. I don't remember who made it, but
it was Black Isle as well.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's probably the one Black Isle game I never played.
I think it. You know what? As sad as it might be to say this, I think it might have been Black Isle's last game because I don't think it did very well. Yeah, before they shut down. But
they might have gone too far by going, to reality.
Yeah. Well, but
sort of
I think reality. To your point, this re-kicked off that renaissance, and then I have a segue to the next point I wanted to make. But it also kind of gave people permission to take risks in a genre that wasn't being, there weren't risks being taken. And I would say, I would actually put Torment up on that list as well, where I remember thinking about Torment, it's D&D, and I remember kind of loosely understanding the Planescape stuff. I never did tabletop with the Planescape setting, but not really being that interested in it. It was just too weird mishmash of sci-fi and stuff. But, they took risks with it, and it ended up being one of the most interesting RPGs for me.
Yeah, I would say Fallout paves the way for Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate paves the way for Torment. Yeah,
they go hand in hand. I think Baldur's Gate was not too far after this, though, and probably
it wasn't. No, it wasn't
in development. But
yeah, it was also a game that they had really good press on because it was huge, and very long. This game probably could be very long. Certainly the first time I played it, I did not get through it in the 25 or 30 hours that I got through it here. I'm sure it was more like 50.
Yeah.
So.
The other theme that goes with that, I think, that I want to kind of combine with your point about like the Renaissance, is the adult theme. We talked about it in the first episode, and it's not as much a takeaway, but I think it ended up playing a critical role because it allowed a genre that was pretty typically in that D&D space and was seen as a certain kind of player and user. And to your point about the Renaissance, it's kind of just dawning on me now that if you combine those two and you think about our ages and the audience that was playing those RPGs, the Ultimas and the Bard's Tales and those, it was us when we were kids. And then you're growing up to a certain age, and then you get this RPG that was in the same spirit, but then had adult themes. It had guns and
drugs,
and cussing and drugs and and questionable material. And for me, at least, I remember this sort of like kind of Venn diagram happening where I was like, this is the best thing ever. It's post-apocalyptic. Yeah. It's got Mad Max in it. It's got it's got these adult themes, and I'm an adult now, and so I wonder if those kind of piggyback a little bit. Well, maybe. Yeah, sort of an adult.
You look like an adult.
I'm trying. I'm still trying.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's spot on. I mean, this was at a time when this wasn't too long after Senate hearings about violence in video games, right? I mean, this was it has all that violence. And we actually had a colleague who testified in Wayne Klein.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Wayne testified before the Senate.
I didn't know that.
He did, yeah. He went to D.C. and actually spoke in the rotunda or wherever they did that.
What was it on behalf of? Not to get into a tangent, but
on behalf of LucasArts, probably as part of the ESA, because the ESA would have been doing the actual lobbying. But yeah, he spoke, and that was like the Mortal Kombat era, which would have been maybe 2 years before this, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, it was a super hot topic. Yeah, and this was always. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where to be able to get to these kind of mature stories, and I mean, it's nice to be able to point to these as, this isn't War and Peace, but in 1997 and 8 or whatever, there were already people doing really interesting things in the narrative of the role playing space, which was way deeper than really anything before that. I mean, you look at some of the science fiction inflections of early Ultima games, as I have, and they don't hold up. But here, I mean, this so definitely does. Right? I mean, we've both played it multiple times.
It still does too, and I think that even just the written descriptions of things, are just really well done and crafted and fit together. It's such a darn complete package. It
really is.
Like just
it's very confident
in every way, right? They had their vision, they had their theme, and they stuck to it through the UI, through the audio design, which is still amazing, through the music and ambient sound design. I still like every section, every location you go to, that background kind of somber music shifts toward the theme of that.
You're industrial in the stuff, and
you're in the Brotherhood.
I should call out Brian Luzietti, who was the music supervisor on this. He and I actually shipped a game together a couple of years ago, so I actually know Brian. Yeah, the 60-second shooter Prime. He did the music. He knows Jamie Fristrom from back in the day, I guess. But anyway, I saw his name in the credits. I was like, oh, how about that?
Yeah. Kudos to him. That was definitely.
Yeah. I don't know that he was the composer so much as like the person kind of orchestrating, but it was hard to get more details. I tried to look it up, but it's a while back, and not everything was archived back then. So.
Yeah, and I just I think those few themes kind of combine together. Just kind of, I think your point about Renaissance is a good one. I mean, it's interesting, because we played Day of the Tentacle, and we talked a lot about adventure games kind of declining, and they sort of have had a couple moments of, I would say, medium-sized renaissance with Telltale, and these days, right, they're kind of creeping back up.
Sure, and Double Fine's still doing them.
Double Fine, but I think that when they had hit their decline, it left a bit of a, I guess I'll just summarize by calling it a story vacuum, where there wasn't a lot of interesting storytelling going on in games, kind of other than in RPGs. And then this one comes out to kind of like double down on that and doing some different things. And I think, like you said, from there, it really gave others the permission to kind of go and try some stuff out. It happens with every one of these podcast series we do. I want to go play Arcanum and finally finish that. I want to go back to Temple. I never played New Vegas. So it's like, ugh.
Yep.
I just can't.
Give ourselves so much more homework.
Yeah. Oh boy.
I have started Arcanum a couple times as well, and I've never finished that one either. But it's one of those CDs that I always have in that. Remember we got a LucasArts CD rack one year.
Yeah. It's sitting there.
I still have that. It's still in that thing. It was that game, and System Shock 2 was in there. That's a game that I go back to every now and again.
I got pretty far in Arcanum. I think I ran into bugs. Really, is what happened.
Further than me. Probably further. But yeah, great game.
Great game. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy we played it. It really brought back good memories, and I personally think it holds up pretty well even today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't even notice, that it's a little lower res or whatever. I mean, I did notice with the movies, but that's because they're like in this tiny square in the middle of the screen. But the rest of the time, it's not even noticeable. So it's actually a very playable game at this point.
The other thing that was really really fun for me, which I talk a lot about, which hits the consequences and really like fully embracing being an RPG, which a lot of RPGs these days don't even do that good of a job. I would, not to necessarily overly criticize the franchise, but I feel like Mass Effect does run into the sort of like good or evil. There isn't always a lot of gray in there, and that's why I tend to like the Witcher games quite a bit. But this one, you know, it was fun for me to listen to your playthrough, which you played differently than you had done before. And I feel like back in the day when I played with others who were playing at the same time, other friends, we all were sort of generally playing in a similar way. You know, no one was really playing the a-hole. No one was really playing to break the systems. And both you and I played pretty differently. And so it was fun to listen to pretty uniquely different playthroughs.
Yeah, you know, and what I'll say about that, when you talk about the morally gray stuff, it's not so much that it's morally gray. It's that, as you pointed out, characters, you know, NPCs have needs and goals, right? That form their characters.
Real,
you know, and
more realistic.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, I just want to be a good guy. It's, I want to keep law and order because if there aren't as many guns, I'll probably survive longer. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You know, it's
meaningful
it's all
motivations.
about that. I mean, exactly. And so the NPCs being real characters then gives it just much greater depth to the world and makes things like, you know, getting 2 points plus to good, you know, make no sense at all because that calculus doesn't exist. It's how will this advance my survival?
Yeah.
And that might sometimes be a pretty dark thing that you have to do to make that happen. So
yeah,
it's really deep that way.
Oh, right, and well, this another quick one that relates to, I think, success or not success, but rewarding players for playing differently and playing in an unorthodox, well, not unorthodox, but kind of not the typical way. And I made this note that I forgot to mention back, maybe even in episode 1, but it gave you XP for things other than killing and really rewarded you for doing so. And
yeah, that's true.
That was also, I remember at the time being kind of surprised about that, especially in this kind of game, because typically the D&D games were not very much about that. And that kind of, I think, also gave permission to other games to start doing that.
Yep, that's a good point. That's another, that's definitely a big change. It used to be, you got, you know, I mean, if you went back to the D&D manual, you know, it was you get XP for killing things and for treasure.
Yeah.
That was like the only things, like your XP was directly a log of what you had killed or plundered.
Yeah.
And that really suffused a lot of games because D&D is such a formative thing for so many people. This game feels more like a GURPS game, right? And where those things are not, you know, it's not necessarily about that. It's about a lot of customization and all that stuff. So it's a very different kind of feel.
And I think Tim Kane's on record saying GURPS was right. Was
yes,
a big influence for him.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yep. I think they couldn't get the license, or maybe management didn't even want to bother. But it was because they already had some D&D stuff in the works, probably. But yeah, a big deal. All right. Well, I think with that we'll tie a little bow around Fallout, except for some feedback. I want to tease some stuff so you listen to the feedback. We have a couple of things to announce towards the end of the episode. We're teasing a couple things, but first I want to read some emails and stuff. First from Stefan. I don't know if you remember Stefan, but he was the one who was playing a low intelligence playthrough. High luck, low intelligence. Awesome. He said he explored almost everything, and besides the Rad Scorpion Cave and Shady Sands, he couldn't do a single side quest, which means he had to do the final areas, or he has to do the final areas underleveled and only with dog meat as support.
Oh my goodness.
It says two things of note. One, I encountered a truck wreck in the desert where I found more than 10,000 caps. 10 luck at work, I guess.
What? That's the best.
That's pretty great. And then he said the super mutant in Necropolis with the forced, that's what the ghoul town, with the forced dialogue has an int check. He just let me pass after a short conversation that went like this. Me. Him. Huh? Me. Huh? Him. What? Me. Mom? Done. Not much else to tell you guys since I don't have access to much of the content. So that is pretty great, Stefan. I appreciate it. It supports even the dumb playthrough.
That is so amazing that they have that conversation in there.
Oh, that's so good.
And you just let them pass.
Yeah, just let them through.
Like we're all, getting all sweaty over like stealthing by and
how are we going to get through this? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And sometimes ignorance is bliss.
That's so good. Anyway. Good job, Stefan. That's amazing. Thank you.
Pretty awesome. I'm going to read a couple older comments. I was telling Tim off air that, as it turns out, people have been writing comments or giving us reviews on iTunes, which we encourage and we'd love to see more of. But they've been doing them in other countries, and I didn't know about it because it doesn't show up on the podcast app.
Never dawned on me.
Yep. And somebody emailed in this week and said that they had done so, and so I tried to figure out how to do it, and I found out how to do it. So I want to read a couple that are a little bit older. One is from April. So this is not too long after we started the podcast. This is from Neo Ouija, if that is your real name, via Germany, or from Germany. It says, excellent insights into game design. Lovely series that has veteran game developers go in-depth on one particular game over numerous episodes. These guys go into issues regarding player agency, level design, and world building, as well as many other things, I hope. But yes, thank you for that. If I had known about these, I would have read them earlier.
Thank you.
I have one from July from Great Britain. It says, after starting listening to this podcast, I can honestly say that I'm enjoying it so much more than I thought I would. So, yay, low expectations. The games mentioned so far, while not always being the games that I would or have played, are interesting and different from a design gameplay point of view, and listening to these two hosts talk about their experiences and how they are playing make you want to go and play the game for yourself. In fact, I have restarted Final Fantasy IX after their episodes on it. They announced the next game that they're playing and set clear goals to reach for the next episode, so if you wish, you can play along at home. I just caught up, episode 18, and had to wait 2 weeks for the next episode because they had a week break, and I was so happy when the next episode was released. Now for another week of waiting. So thank you, Cat Charlie. And then I think we're pretty much all caught up, but I do have a few more. One was from Mickey. Oh, I should look this up because it's Mickey D, but that's not his real name. He is Mikael Danielsson from Sweden. This was actually the person. He also wrote in a very kind mail, which is kind of long, so I'm not going to read it. But he was who pointed me out that he had created an Apple ID as an Android user just so that he could go and review us in iTunes.
Wow.
That's what motivated me to go hunt these down.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
He says, gaming from a developer's viewpoint. Brett Duville and Tim Longo bring you a developer's view of classic games as they invite you to play along and experience some of the greatest games in history with them. This podcast will give you insight into games and the game industry of yesterday and today that few other podcasts can provide. Anyone interested in game design, development, and the industry as a whole have much to gain from this excellent podcast. Give it a listen. You won't regret it. So, thank you.
Yeah, well, talk about going the extra mile.
Yep. And one from Germany, from Mr. Futile. Really, wouldn't you say hair futile? I don't know. Great podcast on game design. Great book club-like podcast about two veteran game devs and their view on games of the past. I really enjoy their insight on game design. Final Fantasy episodes got me hooked. Since then, I'm looking forward to the weekly updates. Thanks for making the podcast. You earned your 5 stars, so I appreciate that. And then finally, a brief one from Swinlow44. Really enjoying this podcast. Well worth your time. So we thank you all. A lot of yay us there, but I was catching up from months of not even knowing they were there. So thank you for bearing with me as I patted us on the back. Now my arm is sore. But yeah, I love getting the emails. I do interact with people on Twitter. You can shoot us email at devgameclub@gmail.com or check us out on Twitter at devgameclub. We do love the iTunes reviews. So as promised, wanted to tease a couple of things. The first is a first for us, which is bonus content. You want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do there, Tim?
Yeah, wait, am I going to reveal the actual thing, or it's a...
Sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we obviously been fairly heavily inspired, I think, by this particular series in Fallout 1, and it kind of sparked us to go back and think about Wasteland and Wasteland 2, which is fairly recently out, last couple of years. A lot of the same people that worked on Fallout 1 were around during that phase, worked on Wasteland 2, and seem to have gotten the license themselves, so they actually re-released Wasteland 1. And so we're going to spend just a short bonus content, kind of 20-ish minutes, and stay tuned, and it'll be in the RSS, I guess. Is that what you're thinking?
It'll just show up as another podcast to listen to.
Yeah, and
it's not going to be in depth. We're not going to play the whole game. It's going to be just we played the first bit. It'll probably drop on Friday.
Yeah,
and so something for the weekend.
Our thought here, and we're going to test it out and see if people like it and see if we like it. But having a good through line, direct thread from playing Wasteland 1, Wasteland 2, and Fallout 1 kind of all as a set. And Brett and I will talk about Wasteland 1 a little bit and Wasteland 2 and kind of talk about how things progress, because Wasteland 2 is the closest thing to Fallout 1, in a modern day context. So we thought that'd be fun.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it is in fact much closer to the original Fallout than the Fallout games are, at least in terms of their play. Because those are first-person games in 3D, and although Wasteland 2 is a 3D rendered game, it does still feature basically a top-down kind of look. So it looks very similar, even though it is a fully 3D game, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, you play it as a 2D game, but it is 3D rendered. The other two things I wanted to tease was, one, we are looking for a guest. We're having some vacation issues and trying to run somebody down. We do have an in, and we're going to try to get somebody on for next week. We think that will happen, but again, not announcing anything till we have that solid. That said, since we don't know for sure that that's going to happen, we do want to at least let people know our next game is. And we thought for the last couple of weeks of October and into November, we would play the original Resident Evil.
Resident Evil. You beat me to it.
It's it's the not really the first survival horror game, but it's certainly the best and earliest known. It's a terrific game. PlayStation Plus members, go look at your collection this month. You get to get this one for free. The HD remake, it's available on Steam. Is that right, Tim?
Yep.
So
the remastered.
The remastered version. I am very torn whether I'll play the PlayStation version or the GameCube version, which is how I actually originally played it. So there is a GameCube. There's a great GameCube up-resed port that came out whenever that came out. It's a while ago now.
Which I think is the same one that's on Steam, probably.
Yeah, it probably is, actually. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. So we are going to play Resident Evil. Look, if we don't get a guest, then just look to the Twitter feed for where to play 2. We haven't given any thought to that at all. In the spirit of Halloween and horror, I want to throw this out there. I've been playing some shorter indie games on my Twitch channel, which I've also been putting on YouTube. If you go to twitch.tv/Brett Duville, and now I'm like, is it with an underscore? No underscore. So Brett Duville, no underscore, unlike my Twitter handle. I've been doing it Tuesday nights at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I'm focusing especially on the games of a woman named Kitty Horror Show. She makes very unsettling short experiences. If you hunt down my YouTube account or my Twitch account, you can see the last one I did, which was of a game called Churza, and it's terrifying.
Really?
And I also play it in my basement. And I turn off all the lights, and so I've only got the CRT illuminating me. And I am I am pretty terrified by the end of Churza. So you know, and it's only like a half hour, so it's easy. Go out, check it out. Love to have people drop by and shout boo at me in the chat. I was particularly terrified that my son was going to come home while I was doing it last Tuesday and just like sneak up behind me, because the whole landscape of my basement room behind me looks very different and at night with just the glow of the CRT. So it's
spooky.
Yeah, it's pretty spooky, pretty kooky and spooky. Yeah, I love Halloween. It's probably my favorite holiday. So I do like the scares. A couple of years ago, I wrote, I guess, 35 streaming video film reviews for the month of October.
I remember that. Yeah,
movie every night, and and then doubled up like four of the nights did double features. So it's something I like to do. So
it's a good holiday.
It is a great holiday, and I guess that's it for us.
Yep.
So. In the meantime, you can shoot us email. I gave that before. It's devgameclub@gmail.com. Of course, find us at the web, devgameclub.com, or on Twitter at devgameclub. I am at Brett_Duville, and he's
at Tim Longo Jr.
And we'll see you next time, where we'll either be talking to somebody or being terrified. Good night.
Good night.